hi there! Welcome back to my kitchen. Today we're making the most gorgeous apple tart, and along with being beautiful, it couldn't be easier. It's just a block of frozen puff pastry from the freezer section of your grocery store, some apples, a little bit of sugar, a little bit of butter, and it's the most spectacular dessert, and I think you're going to love it. Let's get started. So the first step is to slice up your apples. You only need about 3 or 4 medium-sized apples, and you can peel them if you want to, but I tend not to peel my apples. I think I've explained that before. If you know where they came from and you know that they haven't been sprayed, I think you're safe to not peel them and get some extra nutrition into your dessert. So I'm just slicing my apples into very thin slices. If you had a mandolin, you could use your mandolin to do this. You should get the apple slices as thin as you can possibly get them. There's the thickness you're going for. I don't know if you can see that. So I have my apples all prepped. I probably have more apples than I need, but better to have too many. You can always just eat the rest. And now we're going to roll out our little block of puff pastry, and it's thawed out. I thawed it overnight in the fridge. So I'm going to take a little bit of flour, just lightly flour my board, put a little bit on my rolling pin. We're going to roll this block out until it becomes a rectangle that measures about 10 by 15. So that's a 10 by 15 inch jelly roll pan. Just line your pan with parchment paper and set that to one side. And then just gently roll this out. And just make sure your block of puff pastry is not sticking to the board or sticking to your rolling pin. If you need to add more flour, that's not a bad idea. There, that looks like a fairly good size. The pastry is very thin, and I think that's about as far as I'm going to get it. So I'm just going to grab my pan, and I'm going to quickly transfer this to the parchment paper. It's not crucial that this pastry completely fill the pan. In fact, it's better if it's a little shy of the edges of the pan, and you'll see what I mean when we get this going. So now we can take our apples and start arranging them all around the pastry. And you want to just leave a 1/2 inch border around the edge and overlap them a little bit. And if some of your apples have gotten a little bit brown while you've been rolling out the pastry, don't worry about that, because this is all going to be covered with a beautiful salted caramel glaze, and that's going to look golden and beautiful, and you don't have to worry about any browning on the apples. It's all going to be caramel deliciousness when we're done. So just keep layering your apples in concentric circles, working your way all around the edge of the pastry. And to some of you this might seem fiddly, and to me it is fiddly too, but it's a good kind of fiddly. It's very therapeutic to spend time in the kitchen just thinking about things, making something delicious. Oh, and if you haven't preheated your oven to 400 already, go ahead and do that now. There. I think that's as far as I'm going to go with apple slices. Maybe one more right there. Okay, that's as far as I'm going to go. So now that our apples are all arranged over the puff pastry, I'm going to cut off 1/4 cup of butter, and I'm going to just divide that in half and set the other half aside for the caramel. And I'm going to take this part of butter, which is about roughly 2 tablespoons, and I'm just going to cut little pieces off and dot it all over the top of the apples. And if you have more in one area than another, just pick it up and redistribute it, and try not to disturb the apples too much. And now we're going to take just plain white sugar, about 2 tablespoons, and just sprinkle that all over the apples. And the higher you drop it from, the more evenly it will distribute. So that was 1 tablespoon. Here's the 2nd tablespoon. Just sprinkle it all over the apples. I'm going to put this in the oven. The oven has been preheating to 400 and it's up to temperature. And I'm going to slide that into the oven to bake for about 30 minutes. And in the meantime, we'll work on our salted caramel that gets brushed over everything. But first, we bake. While your tart is in the oven baking, it's time to start working on the caramel glaze that goes over the top. So that's pretty simple too. We have 1/4 cup of white sugar, and we're just going to heat that over medium heat until the sugar melts and starts to caramelize. And then we'll add in some butter and cream. So follow me over to the stove and we'll get this sugar going. We'll let that sugar melt. That should take about 3 minutes. And once the sugar starts to melt, you'll see it just starts turning to liquid. So we want this to all turn to liquid and also turn a nice light amber color. Take care not to let it burn. There's a fine line between golden and burnt when it comes to sugar. Almost there. Okay, I'm going to take the sugar off the heat now because it's starting to scorch, and I'm going to stir in my butter. Be very careful because that's going to bubble up. Add a little pinch of salt, and then you want to stir in 2 tablespoons of heavy cream. There, your caramel is done. And so now we just set that aside while we wait for the tart to finish baking, and then we'll spread that over the top of the tart. Wait till you see this. Spectacular! That looks simply beautiful. The puff pastry is puffy and golden around the edges, and the apples are nice and tender. And I should have mentioned, just leave the oven on. We've taken the tart out, of course, but leave the oven on because this is going to go back in for a little 5-minute trip in the oven to caramelize the apples once more. So while the apple tart was baking, we made a salted caramel glaze. It's nice and thick and rich, and I have a silicone pastry brush, and I'm just going to gently brush this over the top of everything, trying not to disturb the pattern of the apples. And I may just resort to drizzling it for the most part because I don't want to disturb that beautiful pattern. Let's just gently dribble this here and there. And this is a French style tart, but the thing that's different about it is that it's covered with salted caramel. Unlike most French tarts, French apple tarts, they are finished with an apricot glaze usually. I got this recipe from one of my favorite food bloggers, Deb from the Smitten Kitchen. I just love her blog, and I get her emails, and in the last few days she sent out one that had a whole bunch of apple recipes. Not like I don't have enough apple recipes, but this one really jumped out at me. And she made it years ago, but she included it in this roundup. And I said, wow, I want to try this. It just looks spectacular. I just know it's going to taste spectacular too. I've never made one of her recipes yet that hasn't turned out perfectly. So I will put all the ingredients in the description box. So there's our apple tart that's been coated with the salted caramel. And now we're going to put this back in the oven for another 5 to 10 minutes. But I think 5 minutes in my oven will be just fine. If this dessert looked beautiful before, it is certainly wowza now. Isn't that gorgeous? It's all bubbling with salted caramel. So nice. And it smells fantastic. The hardest part is that we now have to wait for this to cool. I'm not sure I'm gonna be able to make it, but I will give it a try. And so I'm going to leave this here for about 30-45 minutes until things have cooled down to a less molten lava state, and then we'll cut into it and give it a try. Waiting is torture. Okay, I'll be back. So our tart is nice and cool, but still a little bit warm, hopefully. And everything is crisp and flaky, and the salted caramel has all nestled into the apples. And I think we're ready to give this a nice cut and a taste. So using a sharp knife and firm pressure, I think a pizza cutter would be good for this too. Onto a little plate. A piece for the camera guy. My much better half. Now, isn't that pretty? It smells great. So you have your nice layer of puff pastry on the bottom, apples fanned out over the top, sugar and butter over the apples, and then a nice salted caramel glaze over the apples again. And I didn't show you the bottom to see how nice and golden brown the bottom is. Were you able to catch that? I don't want the apples to fall off, but anyway, you get the idea. Anyway, I don't think I'm going to use a fork. I think I'm going to just bite off a corner of this. Holy moly, that's good. That is fall in a tart. So nice. The apples are perfectly cooked, and the pastry is nice and crispy, and that salted caramel glaze is just the sweet finishing touch. I think I'm gonna go get a scoop of vanilla ice cream. One for me, one for him, and we're gonna toddle off into the living room and have a lovely fall dessert. So I hope you enjoyed following along as I made this tart. Super easy, super delicious, and I know I'll be making this one again before the fall apples are out of season. So thanks so much for following along. Thanks for joining me in my kitchen, and thanks for those of you who have made such nice comments on my channel and who have subscribed. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I hope I'll see you here again next week. Thanks for stopping by and baking with me. Bye for now.